This is what the XRP Ledger from the beginning was designed for. It was always a multi-currency ledger. From day one, we had a DEX. From day one, we had tokenization, issued assets from day one. So that was like always like the idea as a update to Bitcoin, which is like a single asset ledger, while the XRP Ledger is a multi-asset ledger.
Payments, FX, remittance, tokenized collateral, all of them have XRP utility as well. As we said, XRP is in the middle of it all. You cannot do anything on XRPL without XRP. So why do we need XRP? On XRPL to do payments and FX trading, for example, XRP is always used for auto-bridging to make the price more efficient.
What brings XRP to the table? It's a neutral asset, counterparty free, nobody owns it, and it's the only asset that anybody can own without a trust line, jurisdictionless. It's sort of that asset that moves through all places without any friction. And it fits like naturally good into the XRP ledger. We are a multi-asset ledger. We have a native DEX, so you can swap between them. And we have tools that deepens the liquidity for these currencies. It's like a match made in heaven. Like it's perfect. It's like exactly that.
Hey and welcome to Krippenreiter TV, our weekly series on Monday, hosted by me, Krippenreiter, and my regular co-host Vet, as always. Some of you may have already heard it. The show is now also available as a podcast for everyone who would rather like to listen to the show than watch the video on YouTube. If you look for Krippenreiter TV on Apple Podcast, for example, or Spotify or Amazon Music or Deezer or whatever, you should be able to find it pretty easily. About the XRPL ecosystem, the past week has been quite drama-filled, with people on X bad-mouthing each other to promote their own product. The reason for this was the fee situation with wallets on XRPL, so a lot of controversies around Xaman's fee structure since Pro got removed. The badge amendment also took a bit of a hit, was briefly in the activation phase, but was unable to prove itself for this 2 weeks activation phase. But something good happened also as well. The permission DEX amendment went live and the new major Euro stablecoin was publicly announced. Hey Vet, how was your last week? Did you focus more on the positive or on the negative aspects of the ecosystem last week?
I'm always positive, always optimistic, as you know. And but it was definitely an interesting week, I would say. Probably, but also very important for the things that you have mentioned. Many in the core important topics that we will discuss. So I would love to dive into them 100%.
Yeah, I think before we start with all the drama, because I'm also not a huge fan of the drama, it happens all the time with XRPL in the ecosystem, but let's try to look forward. Let's try to be positive and focus on what matters. To me, what matters is DeFi most of the time, and in this case, especially institutional DeFi on XRPL. So scaling real-world finance with XRP at the core, very important. XRP is always at the core because on XRPL, nothing works without XRP, right?
That's, by the way, always fun when people try to like disseminate both, like XRP and XRP Ledger. They inherently tie together. You cannot have one without the other. So, and by the way, that one scaling, it was also something that Monica was saying, scaling institutional adoption at the community day. And I think we will see this now when we dive into exactly that. Very interesting times ahead.
Definitely. The article is pretty old, actually, like a few weeks already. So it's not like from last week. It was also part of the community day as well. But I want to highlight this a little bit more again, because I think it's really important for people to see what's happening, let's say, behind the scenes, or what is happening in the engineering side and technical side, so that people understand where are we heading, like what is on the roadmap and what are we focusing right now. So really short, if I scroll down, we see the most important features. Most of them, like right now, as we speak, all of them have already enacted on XRPL, which is credentials, permission domains, and permission DEX. And also we have also the stable coins on XRPL. These are the stable coins we need actually to make FX even possible. Because you obviously need to trade fiat currencies, but you need to have them tokenized and as a stable coin represented on XRPL.
And plus, you need something that is not volatile, right? XRP is a volatile asset. And for a lot of use cases, it's very beneficial to have an asset that is not volatile to do sort of your payments or business with. This is where like these stable coins really come into place. And this is what the XRP Ledger from the beginning was designed for. It was always a multi-currency ledger. From day one, we had a DEX. From day one, we had tokenization, right? Like issued assets from day one. So that was like always like the idea as a update to Bitcoin, which is like a single asset ledger, while the XRP Ledger is a multi-asset ledger.
Yes, but one thing that always was kind of missing, but people ask me all the time, if it was missing and everyone knew about it, why wasn't it proposed already, like the compliance part? Why are we talking about permission domains and permission DEX now? If we already had the DEX, if we already knew how to tokenize, why wasn't this already part of earlier considerations? Why are we talking about this now?
I think you can see, like, there was like the conversation between Mayuka and David Schwartz on at Apex, and he said they had like something very similar in 2015 to the permission part. I believe the permission DEX, but they didn't end up like following through with it, because you have to imagine, like, back then, way less developers, so you need to focus on really what is like matters actually for you. Also at Ripple, and plus, I believe there was like more appetite to not directly be on chain. It was not very obvious that you're going to be directly on chain, but rather through an intermediary like Ripple or centralized exchanges. Now we are seeing like this shift of come on chain, centralized exchanges even tapping into the decentralized exchange. And I think this is where we see the shift now. And of course, then now these things make more sense. It's not because there was like a technical barrier. I guess it was just a different time.
I also think compliance and regulation wasn't even that clear. Back in the day, people
100%.
probably didn't knew how compliance and regulation should work on chain. You need it somehow, but I don't think you knew how to do it on chain. Now it's more clear. Now it's more obvious. Now you know how to do it. Now we have like credentials to filter for a domain, to trade in this domain or lend in this domain. And I don't think this was pretty obvious back in the day. But now it's more obvious. Now we have like these features enacted on XRPL. And if I scroll further down, we see how the XRP economy can be expanded and how we can build with purpose, basically. So we have all these use cases, and we have now all these features, some of them enacted already, some of them still in development. And we already see that every one of these use cases, payments, FX, remittance, tokenized collateral, all of them have XRP utility as well. As we said, XRP is in the middle of it all. You cannot do anything on XRPL without XRP. So why do we need XRP? On XRPL to do payments and FX trading, for example, XRP is always used for auto-bridging to make the price more efficient, if it makes sense. This is what we will talk later as well. But this is really key to understand that auto-bridging, which is a feature that is deeply embedded in the XRP ledger, is something that utilizes XRP to make trading between stablecoins, for example, or any tokenized assets more efficient. Then we have tokenized collateral, where XRP will be used for network usage and object reserves. You cannot hold or do anything on XRPL most of the time unless you hold some kind of object. Like for example, you trade on the DEX. What will happen is you create an offer. But as long as this offer is not filled, someone has to store this information somehow on the XRPL. So someone has to pay for this, or else you could spam the network. So what will happen? You, as the one creating this offer, you have to store basically this offer that is living on chain as long as it's not filled. So this is where XRP comes in, because you have to lock up XRP to utilize the ledger, to utilize tokenized collateral, for example.
And the more usage, of course, you have, right? The more it needs to be locked up. The more usage you have, the more is like XRP as auto-bridging can be triggered. So this is where you have a nice direct correlation with usage.
Right. Also, protocol fees. All protocol fees are always XRP. You cannot have protocol fees in anything else than XRP. I also don't think you should. I think XRP, being the neutral asset, should always be the fee asset used for transaction costs.
And plus, it's of course these fees are burned, so it's actually a deflationary asset by default, which is actually very unique. If you look at other blockchains, specifically proof of stake, they're typically actually inflationary because of the rewards and incentives that they need to do.
But the argument is always that the fee is too low. That the fee
that's
is
true, 100%. That's true.
That burning is not happening fast enough, and there's not enough XRP burned.
Yeah.
But it's still deflationary.
But it's still deflationary. It's good that it is basically not inflationary, because it's on proof of stake chains very, very common to have that. While on the XRP Ledger is not. It's really tied to the incentive model as well. But you can see clearly here in the XRP utility column where XRP is really at the core, right? Is at the core of all of these functionalities, and it acts as very useful mechanisms with its own properties. Like what brings XRP to the table It's a neutral asset, counterparty free, nobody owns it, and it's the only asset that anybody can own without a trust line, jurisdictionless. It's sort of that asset that moves through all places, like, without any friction and barriers. It's like that's a beauty. Like, imagine you could like go through all countries without just like, showing like any IDs or something like this, because you're just like a ghost who's flown through. That's amazing. So that's a nice column that they made.
This is the superpower of XRP.
Yes.
And now, if we talk about XRP and how to use XRP and maybe even stablecoins and so on, we go back to permission DEX, I would say, because permission DEX links to Ripple payments, which is something I think is important. And if we think about Ripple payments and all these products that Ripple offers, we also have to think about how these products can be utilized, the use cases. Yeah, what is there for permission DEX to be utilized for? And there are 4 big use cases basically. And which one of them would you say is the most powerful one?
I think definitely. I think they really rival each other. It's of course the cross-border payments part and stablecoins, FX swaps. I think that these are synonymous. I wouldn't put them together, honestly, because a cross-border means for me just like FX swaps can also happen cross-border. It just happens like, are you like in my same country or not geographically? So I think the FX one is probably the biggest, or cross-border payments, because it's like together, in my opinion.
Yes, but
it's like the use case. If you imagine it's like the use case.
If we look back at Ripple, right? What was the first use case? Cross-border payments, cross-border remittance.
Yeah, and it fits like naturally good into the XRP ledger. We are a multi-asset ledger, multi-currency ledger. We have a native DEX, so you can swap between them, and we have tools that deepens the liquidity for these currencies. Right. It's like a match made in heaven. Like it's perfect. It's like exactly that.
And now it's coming on chain, which is where it should be from the beginning.
And this is the interesting.
Now it's working.
Yeah, and this is the interesting part. It coming on chain is really, really interesting. And honestly, I don't think a lot of you guys who are listening are really, really paying attention, because this actually coming on chain is really the interesting part. And you need to pay attention to this and not like, oh, where is the price in 1 hour? Look what is coming, because that is the driver.
Because usage will drive price because there's more demand.
Definitely.
It should, like, not saying it will, because we never know, right?
Yeah.
Because of all this macroeconomic stuff happening. But usually you have limited supply, or in our case, even deflationary supply, but you have demand that is increasing over time. We already saw with Autobridging, which we will talk about later. Demand is increasing, the more is happening on XRPL, and everything becomes more efficient. The more XRP is on XRPL, locked and utilized, the more can be used to make payments and cross-asset trading efficient for people.
More efficient. And plus, you have to think about this. Once you have people who are trading on the DEX to FX swaps, you have users.
Right.
Now, these users, right, these institutions, transacting on the ledger facilitates a business opportunity for market makers to use XRP to make markets between those corridors. So now you have people who hold XRP, the market makers hold XRP to do a business. I think this is actually the key utility really for XRP, is to be used to facilitate liquidity by market makers, because they hold XRP and they actually do something with it, right? To facilitate deeper liquidity for other people. And if they can basically induce this usage, right, with FX and cross-border payments, it becomes a field for market makers, which, by the way, we will see in the next picture where you can see like the auto-bridging. That's exactly market makers, by the way.
Right, and the more demand there is, the more XRP is needed for them to hold. Because you cannot do market making, let's say, with 1,000 XRP if the demand is beyond 1 billion XRP, for example. You need to make the market for the demand that is there, and if the demand is huge, the market maker has to hold a lot of XRP to make the market.
So I'm really looking forward to exactly that. Yeah.
Right.
The market maker usage.
The market maker usage. And what market makers will do usually is they make markets for trading pairs, in our case, FX trading pairs on XRPL. And we have so many stablecoins right now. The new one that actually launched a few days ago is from Societe Generale Forge, which is the Euro convertible. And this one is now also live on XRPL. It got issued a few weeks and months, I think, in the past already,
Correct.
but now it's officially launched and officially publicly announced.
Yeah.
It was live on Ethereum first and then Solana. Now it's also on XRPL, which brings us to, I think, there are probably more, but I think these are the most prominent and most important stablecoins that exist on XRPL right now, which is the Euro convertible, the EUROP from Xaman, then obviously Ripple USD representing US dollar from Ripple. And then we also have, for people maybe you remember back in the day, there's also Brazza Bank who issued a US dollar representation, USDB, and Brazilian Real, which is represented via BBRL. These are the stable coins. And now you need to make markets. You need market makers and you need to make markets. But on XRPL, as we know, there's also the way to make cross-asset exchanges more price efficient. And for this, we even in permission DEX, in these domains, on every permission DEX, you still have auto-bridging going on. And I think this is really the key that people need to understand. Just because a new permission DEX comes up, which offers more institutionalized FX trading on-chain, doesn't mean auto-bridging doesn't work anymore. It's quite the contrary. Auto-bridging always works within every DEX that exists. It works on the public DEX the same way it works on the permission DEX. The only thing that doesn't work is you cannot do auto-bridging across permission and public DEXs. This does not work. But within the permission DEX, auto-bridging is still working, and there you have XRP utility.
You inherit all features of the XRP Ledger DEX essentially. Right. You are not so if you use a permission DEX or so, you are taking a penalty. Oh, I cannot use auto-bridging. You inherit all the amazing things with it, just with the additional compliance. That you are now compliant. That's really it. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to more stable coins come on chain, of course. Maybe even some from the Asian sides. Like I would love to see maybe something like Japanese yen, CNY, Chinese, right? Then KWR, which is also used a lot by Upbit. We have seen recently people talked about bring these things on chain because then you can make markets between them, and XRP is the bridge currency, the bridge currency that people always say, the bridge currency.
Actually, but this time on chain. We also have USDC. I didn't mention USDC because it's on chain, but it's not really used that much right now. Maybe it will be used more in the future with permission DEX. We will see. But I think Ripple USD is the more powerful stablecoin on XRPL than USDC.
It is. If you look at, we will see it probably in the next post or so, but which one of them are used a lot by auto-bridging. These not all of them, but most of them come you can see BBRL, you can see Europe, you can see USDC a little bit. So you can see that these issued tokens, right, for FX, they are being market made on the XRPL, and auto-bridging is already happening. Of course, within that scope, right? It's not like tremendously a lot, but you as an investor are forward looking, and I love to see that we are right now. This is important. Right now, seeing this much already, and I'm eager to see where this is going to be once it actually hits the XRP Ledger DEX.
It will scale, and we can see it already. If I open your visualization that you created,
you can see on the top right corner. Bottom right corner, you can see the actual transactions, the trades that happen with the amounts and the transaction hashes. And what you can see here is you can see from one currency it goes to another currency, and in those cases it went through XRP as the bridge currency to deepen the liquidity, to give you a better exchange rate. And I think because I'm looking here at 20,000 ledgers, so roughly 1 day, 24 hours. Around 477 events happened, where XRP was used as a bridge currency. And this, of course, again, is massive. You can scale it up, right? Once you have actual usage of the XRP Ledger with these, with the products, the use cases that you showed before, Ripple payments, G Treasury, all of these things. That is really what I would love for everybody really to pay attention, because this is flying under the radar of a lot of people.
It's the most important utility of XRP on the XRPL. If we talk about FX payments, there are more use cases or more utility coming to XRP, but I think this is the most obvious one, because this is nothing new. Bridging is the first use case that everyone understood is needed, and has a purpose. And now it actually works on chain in a way that is scalable. Like the more usage we see on permission DEXs, the more we will see the total amount of XRP being provided for liquidity, for a better exchange rate, as you say here. It will happen. It will happen more and more the more we see institutional adoption of these permission DEXs, starting obviously with Ripple payments and the stable coins that we mentioned before.
Yeah, and let me add one thing. I think this is important for context. Oftentimes people ask, do other chains have something similar, like DEXs, Uniswap, or whatever? They do have routing, like for efficient routing for liquidity. But we have to keep one thing in mind. This is something they never have, because it's by the nature, is there is always a tax collector. So when you use Uniswap, you always pay tax, like fees, to the Uniswap protocol, right? In addition to transaction fees, because it's on Ethereum, right? So you always have people who profit from this, okay? Right. On the XRP Ledger, these things are baked into the blockchain, in the protocol, what means that any institution, right, can use something on a neutral ground. Like they can use the DEX knowing there is no middleman, right? No one who is extracting. And this is very, very important to keep in mind as we look for banks and institutions to come on chain, to look for a neutral ground, a level playing field. While on only smart contract based chains, it's hard, because either you build it yourself or you use from someone else. On the XRP Ledger, you can say, I'm going to use what's actually being delivered by the blockchain. And that is really, really a good selling point.
Definitely. You also have to understand or keep in mind that everything that people try to copy from the XRP will always be a product and a service built as a smart contract. So even if you would copy Autobridging, which many people did with liquidity routing software, this is a smart contract and a product in itself. It's nothing that is baked into, let's say, Ethereum. It is a product the same way Uniswap is a product and Aave is a product. So the more issues you see in efficiency, the more smart contracts you will see in products that will try to offer you a service to mitigate or reduce the friction. But by reducing the friction and offering a service, you offer a new product that creates even more friction, because it's not baked into the protocol. It's just another product. So you actually don't really solve the problem. You solve it by introducing a new problem. So it's not really solvable on other blockchains. It's only really solvable if it's neutral and baked into the blockchain, which it only is on XRPL, which is a huge selling point, as you said.
Yeah, and we know, like, from people like Ashish, right? They when they talk about institutional demand, they really value something that is robust, something that is like exists, right, for such a long time. And the XRP Ledger DEX is just like, it's like this one beautiful piece. Is a marketplace. It's a public marketplace where people can come and trade whatever they have. Do you have euro? I have dollars. Let's just do the trade. Neutral ground. While these other chains, this marketplace, this public marketplace, is always hosted by someone. It's like always hosted by someone who is going to collect taxes, and potentially even just not allow you to trade. If they can implement something where say, hey, sorry, you cannot trade on our protocol or something like this. On the XRP Ledger DEX, that's not the place. And I think specifically governments, institutions, there's a huge demand in times where people are not trusting each other to have something that everybody can trust. And the best thing, or the thing that everybody can trust, is like trusting no one, like the
XRPL never censors anyone. Not only hard censorship, but soft censorship as well. There's no censorship at all. So at least the neutral ground is there. You can still censor on now with permission domains, for example. You could, for example, censor people or lock people out that are, let's say, coming from Iran or Russia, for example. You could do this. But the XRPL will never do it. And this is something that is important. And I hope this will always be the case for the future. And I hope the validators will always try to keep this in mind and keep this as a core characteristic and intact on XRPL, even in the future. Even if the XRPL goes hybrid with now all these permissioned features, we should still always focus on keeping the core neutral. As you said, keep it neutral, make it censorship resistant, basically. But there are still, like now we talked about the neutral ground, and that XRPL is neutral, the XRPL is neutral. The fees are low, but
I know which segment now comes.
That's the drama that happened, and my God, it was insane. The drama was crazy. And the drama was about Xaman and their service fees. And by the way, if Batch gets enacted later in the future, we will also see platform fees and service fees from other projects as well. So this is just the beginning. The only difference is that Xaman is doing it already, just like First Ledger did it with bulk transactions, where you sign a transaction and you sign a service fee as well. So in this case, if we talk about Xaman service fees, if you go on their help center, on their blog, you will see this overview, and this is basically what they charge. So if you use their wallet, this is what they do. Most regular transactions remain free. It wasn't the case in the beginning, but they changed. Now it's free. Then they have a market trading fee, which is a small 0.8% fee with a minimum of 0.09 XRP. The 0.8% is actually industry standard. You will see it everywhere. This is not high or low in just on Xaman or XRPL. This is like used everywhere, right? Then you have 0.5% fee on yield products. I'm not sure if it's actually working because I invested in soil, 10 Ripple USD, and I didn't have to pay anything. So maybe it's not really working. I don't know. And then you have pathfinding transaction cost of 0.15 XRP, which is also fixed fee. And then the last point is only for high value Xaman service fees on payments over $50,000.
If I send you $50,000 in XRP, like as a payment, then
doesn't even have to be XRP, can be tokens as well.
Okay.
Important to understand is you could do it in batches. Let's say I do 49,000 today, and then next day I do 49,000 as well, or again. Then you will not pay anything because there's like this rolling 12-hour window. And they filter for source and destination.
Let me say like one thing. The discussion generally about fee structure would have been a super interesting one. Like I love to discuss like about fee structure, what are like good ways of like maybe monetizing and implementing fees. What are maybe some fee structures that are maybe not so good? You know, like you can debate this. Unfortunately, what we have seen like in the community, this debate was completely like left out and destroyed by a lot of people who went like totally extreme. So for everybody who was following the conversation, you were not seeing good basically discussions really about fee structure. It was more about throwing at each other like stones, right?
Bad mouthing,
bad mouthing. That was not good, unfortunately, because in core, actually a super interesting topic, and I think a lot of projects. It's also something that you ask yourself when you create a project. You are a builder. How do I monetize? What is good? What is like a good rate? How should I charge my users? It's something that every builder needs to answer. Eventually, if they want to be sustainable.
Right. Everyone on the XRPL who offers a product needs to earn revenue, or else you should just go away. And there are basically two ways to do it. You either do it like Xaman is doing it with transparent fees that you see on the overview when you sign your transaction, or you sell user data, what most products do, or you sell them by showing advertisement, for example, which is also a way to earn revenue, but then you have to clutter your product with advertisement.
Or what some other people also do is just issue a token.
Right.
So to raise funds. This, not good options. The really fair option is to say, hey, this is the fee, right? You can see it. When you swipe at your transaction, you agree to both, right? You agree, of course, to your own transaction and that you pay. You cannot detach because else people would say, oh, I'm not paying the fee and still resubmit. So they need to be together. Right. And let me also just say one thing, because people were like putting this forward for Xaman. I think this is like important because we have a lot of Xaman users listening. Xaman is not storing your seeds or anything like this. Like they're not the team. It's all on your device. You sign it yourself and you agree or not. And by the way, if you disagree with all of these things, like you say, I don't want. Fortunately, like there are some other options that you can just look into, and you can say, I use a different wallet. There's no problem with that. You can absolutely do this.
True. I'm a huge believer in free markets, and if you think that these fees are not legitimate or not viable for you, just show Xaman that this is not what you think should happen, and move your funds over to another wallet. Try to make it visible that you are not visible in a sense that you like badmouth on X about Xaman and their fees, but actually move your funds elsewhere. Like use another wallet. for whatever reason, for whatever use case, you think the different wallet, let's say Joey, for example, is a better choice, you have to actually do it, or else Xaman would never realize that this is a problem. Because from the point of view of Xaman, they see all this hate against them on X, but no one is actually leaving the ecosystem. They're not leaving their platform or their wallet service. So why should they stop charging fees? Because it seems to work out, right?
Yeah, it's also not a fair conversation, because we have also to keep in mind, if you want, let's say, to change your wallet or something like this, you want to look for something as secure, with as safe, has also security audits, like all of these things. And then it becomes very thin,
Right.
Because there's a lot of vibe coded maybe wallets even out there, where people who just, did this over the weekend. It's very dangerous.
Super dangerous.
So yeah, you need to be very, very careful with this. And plus, for some people, some wallets are more suitable than others. So let's say if you use a Tangent card, I also have a Tangent card, then Xaman is definitely your way to go, because other wallets don't. If you say, well, I don't need a Tangent card, then you can look maybe something into like Joey and give that a shot. It really depends on you, but you need to really assess, what do I want?
Right. One big difference is also being feature complete. And as far as I know, Xaman is really the only wallet right now that is feature complete, which is a huge problem, because even if you like different wallets, like for example, I like Joey, but I cannot really switch over because they're not feature complete. I asked them about regular key support, for example. They don't offer regular key support. Yeah. So what I can't do, I cannot sign on behalf of my account with a Joey wallet account, because they are not offering regular key support, which only Xaman supports right now. So you are basically stuck, but not because they are gatekeeping. You are stuck because Xaman truly offers the best product right now. Yep. And because they're offering the best and the most secure product right now, obviously they charge fees for it, because they have to earn revenue, because they have to be sustainable, or else they would just go away, right?
Yeah, that's why I loved seeing Joey coming out, because having that, we just need definitely more wallets. I think just having one wallet is not a great solution. Like having multiple options is always good, also from a market point of view, as you say, because competition at the end of the day is good for the user. It gives you a good product, gives you good pricing. It also keeps innovation up, right? If one wallet does something really great and a lot of people use, other wallets are forced to do it as well, right? To show maybe some tokens, or to do like better NFT trading. So competition is very, very, very important. This is why I'm a huge supporter of also of Joey. But it needs to be on a high level. Like at the end of the day, we talk about security. So we need to have like good security, good audits, and things like that. And then it becomes, again, very thin, actually, on XRPL.
Yeah, true. Would you say there is something within this overview of transaction fees for Xaman that you would say is just absolutely something you are heavily against? For example, maybe the fixed fee, or as Adam said, this part, for example. Would you say this is something Xaman should maybe rethink a little bit?
What Adam was posting here about the 90% of the revenue with the app develop is like what they do with they split. They have revenue share. So basically, if the revenue that goes through the Xaman, if it comes through your app, right, then they're happy to share it with you. They're not really forced to do that. They can just keep it to themselves. So it's actually cool that they give that sort of back to the app developer. Right now, just without batch, you don't have really a way to do your own monetization. So it looks like, the max that you can get is like 10% of sort of. But it's just because we don't have batch. Once we have batch, it's going to be better. Right. If I would look into like all of the transactions when we go to the interesting discussion again, right? The fee structure. I'm personally not a huge fan of the flat fee. I have to be honest. The flat fee, so flat for the transactions. Not a huge fan. I understand why you would do it, because you have to do the following. You have costs, right? As a product or project here, you have costs. In that point of view, as a wallet, okay? So your wallet. Then you go to livenet.xrpl.org. You see where these blocks like close with the transactions. You see the amount. So you see how many transactions are in one block, okay? You see the transactions and you say, okay, because most of them, or a lot of them may, not most, but a lot of them come also from Xaman. How can you fit your costs that you have into one block of transactions? So you look at these and you see suddenly, well, a lot of transactions on the XRP Ledger are actually people doing DEX offers, okay? And very little maybe actual payments to send to somewhere else. Maybe you have some DEX swaps. Now we have more DEX swaps. So what you do is you say, okay, I have a lot of DEX swaps. I have transactions that do limit orders, and you try to monetize that. Because if you would do only, I'm pretty sure, if you would do only monetization for one specific a part that is small, you would not be viable to cover your costs. So I think they would not be able to cover their costs if they would not do the flat fee, because you look at, I have my costs, I need to fit it into what's available in transactions. How do I do this?
Also for paving, for example, pathfinding transactions are really cost heavy. Because most of the time to do these pathing transactions, you actually have to utilize specific nodes. They call it pathing nodes because these nodes are really just there for pathing transactions, because they are more load heavy than other transactions. So it's cost more to process these than other transactions, which is why they introduced a fixed fee, for example. I think this is why, because it's just super cost heavy to pay for pathing. And the market trading, for example, a lot of microtransaction happening. If you just pay 0.8% for all these microtransactions, you're not really making any money to pay for your costs, right?
And let me tell you also one thing. This is like where the discussion is super important, right? Like having constructive discussion. I remember where like Adam was also posting about NFTs, and when you list an NFT, it was costing you a flat fee. Xaman reacted. They made it free. So you can see this now in the list. Minting and listing NFTs is unaffected. That was awesome, right? That was really cool that they did this, because they listened to the community. So, okay, can they do this? I mean, again, it's revenue that is not coming into their pocket. So it's always tough to say no to revenue, let's be honest. And honestly, I think it would be really great. One solution where you would see this, if we would get more DEX swaps. The more DEX swaps would happen on the XRP Ledger and activity, the more they can monetize that, the less they need to monetize other transactions. So, and this is, by the way, also what they said. They would adapt to the market. So if they get if they can cover costs with all these other transactions or increased activity, they would even lower fees or change things up to make users more happy. It's just right now they need to, as you say, you need to be sustainable. With batch transactions, more projects will do fees. It's a natural course.
Yeah, we are not used to it, I think. We are not used to service fees and platform fees, but this will come in the future. With batch transactions, you will have to get used to paying service fees for using a service. Because the people that are offering a product to you, they're project startups, they want to earn something to offer you something. If you don't want to pay for their service, they will not be able to be sustainable, and obviously these projects will all go away. So to keep the XRPL ecosystem strong and to make it possible even for startups to be successful, you have to allow them to charge some kind of fee. And we already know from Witzewin, for example, it's not like they are making a fortune. They are not even, he said he's break even, but then in the next post he said he's not really. So they are like close to break even, I guess, which is, as some people found out, they are selling I think 30,000 XRP right now every week. And if you stack this up on a year, they are able to sustain themselves and break even. It's not like they're making a fortune. They're not like earning a ton of revenue. They exist right now, which is...
Let me say this now. Shout out to all the builders who always say don't look at XRP price, XRP and so on. Like a lot of builders are really, really shitty when it comes to XRP. They see like XRP Ledger as like this crown, look, and XRP is like, don't talk about this. Price is not important, and so on. The same situation, as you said, 30,000 XRP, right? If XRP would go to $5 or whatever, they would be immediately in profits, right? Immediately, because it's directly tied when you do monetization, specifically in XRP, it's directly tied to the value of the token. Something that a lot of engineers just don't want to admit. It's like some, so it just tells you like, XRP is important. This is why don't do this thing about, XRP is detached from XRP Ledger. No. It's very important. So actually everybody's in the same boat. And I hope that it becomes better.
We also know as the price increases, the demand increases for the products as well.
Exactly.
We know that more people can be onboarded, the more the price increases. So there is a correlation between both, right?
100% of correlation. Just look at 2020, what was it? 2024? 2024 to 2025 when we had the bull run. When XRP went up from like 50, 60 cents and then $3. This is the exact same time where we had tremendous amount of activity on the XRP Ledger, you remember? It's really directly correlated.
Definitely.
And that's unfortunately something that a lot of engineers and builders, they don't want to see that. Maybe some of them don't hold much XRP or XRP at all. But the thing is, when you monetize as a builder, you monetize typically in the asset. So you have a vast interest in the asset to succeed, specifically because it gets a lot of people through the door and to do DEX activities. It's just the truth. And we have seen it time and time again.
I mean, with Batch, for example, you don't even have to monetize an XRP anymore. You could also, let's say, monetize in Ripple USD, because what you do is you just add another payment transaction on top of the transaction that you actually want to do. And this payment transaction that is like the service fee could be Ripple USD payment, for example, could be XRP payment, for example, could be any other stablecoin, could be any other token, just to realize the service fee. So right now it's just XRP. I think maybe some projects will actually move over to a stablecoin to be less exposed to the volatility that XRP offers, which is good and bad. But most of the time it's bad because right now we have 1 year of volatility where the price went down, not really up. So there's no advantage for being exposed to XRP. In these times, you actually want to monetize for Ripple USD, or maybe you want to do both. So you can like DCA maybe into XRP while the prices go down. There are many ways to monetize in the future with Batch, which is why Batch is important. But that Batch didn't succeed right now. What is happening?
Batch didn't succeed.
The activation phase started. We both talked about it. I put this tweet out, and basically 6 minutes later, it was like, no, let's don't do it.
It was so just to go with the timeline. It just needed one more vote. Okay, so one more vote was needed, and so I made also the post that hey, like one more vote needed. And I think
Daniel was
Sloppy said, hey, like, can we just look at someone to? I said Daniel, because I was seeing that Daniel was voting nay, and if he votes yes, Batch goes into activation 2 weeks, which he actually then did. Kudos to him. Very quickly, he made the post. And so it was actually really cool. So Batch went into activation. Then there was a message published to the validators and a lot of people in the community that it's actually better from the core dev people in the community say, hey, let's have first the fix go in before the main amendment. Okay, no problem. So a lot of people pulled the vote for the Batch amendment.
Wait, if we talk about the fix, we talk about Batch
inner sign. Yes. So a lot of people started voting for the Batch inner signer, but it was still not enough because some people just forgot to vote, I guess. So we focused on, hey, let's get the fix in activation, and then we can immediately put Batch back into activation. Okay. So that they sort of simultaneously go live. All right. So that was the thought. Then what happened was very shortly after, it seems to be, that the bug bounty program, or through the bug bounty program, a community member or community group of people submitted essentially a report and said, hey, we found something. Okay. And then, of course, was advised here as well to say by XRPLF and others, to pull more the votes. So there was already not an activation. This is why XRP Ledger was never affected, because it was not in activation, and it was also not activated. That's also important to pull this, because they want to review what the issue is. There will be like more published by RippleX, I assume, and other core devs.
For sure.
Like we had with the last amendment as well, permission delegation. This was like very similar how they published later on. And, yeah, so we can expect more information to follow up, but this means that batch for now is on hold until there is a fix for it. Like there will be probably a new XRP Ledger software update.
Even the fixed batch in R6 is on hold, right? I see the voters dropping. I think it will. Can it be possible that the new fix will be like put together with the old fix? To just
this is what I assume, so that you would basically deprecate both. So you're going to deprecate this batch amendment and the fix, and have a new version that is now better, that has both inside, even with the newest findings through the report.
Makes sense.
And then we can vote on this one, and then hopefully, of course, this will then be all good, and then no problem of none of that. It's just unfortunate because it happens like so quickly, timeline wise. It was like back and forth, but the core devs already were like, cautious. Hey, first fix amendment, please. Right, get this in. They pulled the vote, and then the report came in. But by the time the report came in, it was already not an activation, because people were like pulling their votes because of the advice to have the fix in. Yeah.
But how can we protect against these things in the future? Because I feel like these issues that need a fix, they always seem to come up in the last, let's say, a minute. Like the feature goes into activation phase, and then for whatever reason, someone, probably Tico, finds a fix in the last minute that seems to be important, and then we need to wait for another month or another version to put out to make it possible to vote again.
Unfortunately, it's like always this case where you have like, when an amendment has votes, nobody pays attention. Once it goes into activation, everybody's like, oh, it's actually happening now. Let's look at it. And then a lot of things came out. Same thing, by the way, happened with NFTs. NFTs, no problem, nothing. And once it went into activation, a lot of people started like looking into it, kicking like the tires, and seeing, oh, there's an issue. And then, back then we had also that stuff. So we have a history of basically, revising these things and reacting. But one thing that we need to definitely double down more on is looking into the bug bounty program, because this is where it came through. Expand on it, because it's great that we caught it through the bug bounty program.
Seems to work,
so
right?
something that was effective. We have the attackathon happening with the lending protocol. Just more of these things. We have the formal verification specification. Hopefully, once we can get more modules specified, not only, as you said, payment engine and consensus, but more. This will help. And then hopefully, once we have that, we can also maybe look into something like smart contracts. Personally, I believe smart contracts is the best way for these granular amendments. In the case of batch, by the way, I believe batch is actually a good amendment, but it's not a symptom of batch. It's a symptom of an amendment. We have protocol changes, and a protocol change can be buggy. It's not, it's just because of batch. No, it's because it's a protocol change.
Smart contracts too, right? But then it's isolated with smart contracts.
It's isolated with smart contracts. So in the case, let's assume in that case it wouldn't work, right? Assume batch would be a smart contract, or could be done through a smart contract, like implemented. Let's just assume. And batch would have, like, let's say someone who implemented it would have an issue. Okay, so they created a smart contract called batch, has an issue, has a bug. Not good for this smart contract that they have, but very important. Everyone else in the ecosystem is not affected. And this is very, very important. And I think this is also important when we look into institutional onboarding, because we want, if you are an institution, you don't want people to mess with the code base, and then you are going to be affected. So actually, this is something we really need to pay attention to as we onboard with Ripple payments and so on. And, these people are coming. We need to get like really solid in this aspect.
Right.
What are you thinking?
Right, definitely. Because I think like we are scared already. Like if we are scared of the tiny amounts that we manage, and we are we are less risk averse than those institutionals. They are more not willing to move on chain if they see features not getting enacted and having problems than we do. If we already don't feel like enacting features is safe, why should an institutional handling billions of dollars feel safe and secure using a feature that is maybe not safe enough? Yeah. I think there's a lot we can do. I think there's a lot we should do, especially, as you said, I think smart contract, like there are many things, the formal specification, for example, as you said, but I think, as you said, smart contracts is probably the easiest way, not in a sense on an engineering part, because smart contracts obviously is a huge engineering effort. But if it comes on chain, if it's there and enacted, you can actually use smart contracts to build something first as a smart contract and then migrate it over to a native primitive as soon as you think it makes sense to be on a primitive level.
I agree. And, you know, I want also to really encourage like all people in the community, all stakeholders, all developers, project and so on, when they look at this. It's very important not to do finger pointing, right? Like in these things, because this is like always what's happened is like, I told you so, because we have this both ways. When there's a bug, it's like, you know, told you so, right? Like it's your fault. You activated. I told you not to activate. And then you have on the other side, before this happens, a lot of people point their fingers, let's say to people, you are not voting for the amendment. You are hurting the ledger, right? So it's like this, like the people who are wanting the amendment are blaming the other ones. And when the people get the amendment, it's buggy. The people who were like vetoing, saying, hey, look, I told you so. It's not helpful. And I think the only thing that we really can do is just say, hey, what do we really want? We want the XRP Ledger to succeed, all of us. And we make like really awesome changes currently to get like awesome use cases to the DEX. Like you mentioned, DEX, permission DEX, domain. Let's work together to see like what we can do to really optimize this. How can we make like people comfortable to be on the same page? And if then things happen, right, we own it. I mean, we are a community. We're going to deal with it. It's a social consensus ledger, right? Like all blockchains, we will deal with it. But we need to be on the same page and work together, because that's how we can maximize efficiency. Else we're just going to spend time uselessly arguing.
For sure. And what the community always proved to do good and right is communication when things don't go well.
Yes.
Like it's maybe you could argue that the communication is not good enough when it comes to activating new amendments, because people don't care. Maybe they are not incentivized to care about an amendment. But as soon as an amendment has issues, and I think this is more important than the other communication part, is to be on the same boat as to protect the ledger and protect the assets, protect the community. And that's also why I'm pretty bullish on the current DUNL. Not all of the people on the DUNL, but most of them, because they prove to really care about the ledger if things go wrong. And then they prove that the communication is actually happening and really fast when it's important. And this is what we should really focus on. Not always finger point and say they are not caring, they are not doing anything good. Also finger point and tell them, thank you, you just rescued our assets. You know?
It's symbiotic, right? Because you want features, but you want them safe. So that's basically the two sides. And there's like plenty of room to work together. And I'm definitely bullish on the people, because we have the best people in the community to deal with these things. So I'm looking forward to how we can do this all better, and to just increase more and double down on our strength, what we can do. Because we are right now really cooking, we're really cooking as a community. We are getting awesome things on the ledger. There is real preparation of mass adoption on the XRP Ledger institutions. So let's all focus. Let's just all focus. It's a very exciting time, and I'm looking forward.
Yeah, me too. Especially now with the XRP Ledger Foundation, I think now is the time really to double down and also help the XRP Ledger Foundation help us. Like we need someone or something, an entity, in this case, I think it's the XRP Ledger Foundation, who steers the communication. And I think it worked this time, and I hope it will work in the future as well. It will get better. I think the communication is more an issue than the actual technical side. So now with the XRP Ledger Foundation, I think this issue that we always had in the ecosystem is solvable. And you don't have to put in a lot of money in it. You don't have to incentivize anyone. It's just XRP Ledger Foundation now doing the right work to bring us all together and make the XRPL safe and secure and usable for the masses, and make us all comfortable to actually enact features and be safe.
Yeah.
And thanks, Vet, for the show again. It was amazing.
Absolutely.
A lot of drama as always in the ecosystem, but this time it was pretty heavy, I think. But we are a family after all. Sometimes we are an army.
Small things, but it's that's why we started. Like we showed, like overarching. It's like very bullish. We have a lot of awesome things going on, and everybody should focus on this, right? Like the small things is like if you want to get into them, but overall, it's like amazing times ahead.
Right. Discussions are important. We have to discuss also the dramatic and drama-filled points sometimes, because you cannot just ignore them. But the main focus should always be on how to move forward, how to earn money, how to earn revenue, how to bring the XRPL forward, how to bring institutionals and retail on-chain and offer them services and products, and hopefully also at some point smart contracts to make it possible for them to create and develop products. And I think this will really move the needle.
Yes.
And I hope we see each other again. It was amazing.
100%.
And as always, be safe out there and take care. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.